Mr. John Robbins is the best-selling author of Diet for a New America and his new book, Healthy at 100. John Robbins is the only son of the founder of the largest ice cream chain in the world, Baskin-Robbins. Instead of inheriting the overwhelming wealth and privilege of this ice cream empire, Mr. Robbins chose to disavow his inheritance and become a vegan activist. We are honored to share with you his inspiring example of healthy living.
Could you speak a little bit about values as in relation to our food choices and the impact that that might have on people around us?
That's a great question. Most often when people buy food at the market or at the restaurant or the fast food store, they don't really think about anything except maybe what it costs and how it tastes. Maybe they think a little bit about what it's going to do to their waistline. But that's usually about it. But there are so many more consequences to the choices we make on our health that we don't tend to think about, but also on the health of the world, on the environment, on the people who are involved in food production. There are social implications. There are enormous consequences to the way we as a culture eat, the way we as communities prepare our food, the way we as families and individuals share our food. And I've tried to enlarge people's thinking around it, make people more aware that there is an animal involved, for example. If you're eating meat or drinking milk or eating cheese or any kind of animal product, there is an animal at one end of the system. And what happened to that animal? How is it treated? Because modern meat production has developed in a particular way that makes for profits for agribusiness. But it makes for enormous suffering for the animals involved. They are confined in what are called intensive conditions that often give the animals no more space than their body requires. They're in cages the size of their bodies. They would actually have more space if you stuffed them into the trunk of a subcompact car and kept them there. They can't move at all. And that's the point. Because if an animal can't move, it can't, so to speak, waste calories in movement. So it's profitable, but it's horribly cruel. Modern factory farming is unbelievably cruel. It violates the instincts and the needs that are basic to the animal. I'm talking about cows, I'm talking about chickens, I'm talking about turkeys, I'm talking about pigs. The whole veal calves, all the animals that are involved in modern meat production are treated by large-scale animal agriculture as if they had no needs of their own, as if they weren't living beings. They're just commodities in a supply chain. The fact that they have any kind of instinct and need for space, for movement, any kind of social needs, any kind of need not to be in abject pain is not part of the equation. So as consumers, we need to grasp that that is the reality. And we have to ask, is eating products from systems like that in alignment with our values? If we are people who want there to be peace on earth and want it to begin with ourselves, if we are people who want there to be less suffering in the world, and we want our lives to contribute to less suffering, if we are people who want the world to be a thriving, prosperous place for all kinds of creatures, then what are we doing to our bodies, and what are we doing to the earth, and what are we doing to the entire earth community when we eat food that's produced in that way? I think it's a violation of the human-animal bond. I think it's a violation of our own spirits. I know it's absolutely devastating to the animals that are involved, and I can't ignore them. I can't sit down to eat and think, oh, it comes from the butcher, and not remember the eyes of cows I've looked into, not remember cats and dogs I've loved, and thought, well, why do we make this interesting distinction? In this culture, we tend to do this. We call some animals pets, and we love them, and we lavish our care on them, and we often experience that they're part of our families. It's quite beautiful, actually. But then another group of animals, we call them dinner, and by virtue of that distinction, we feel it is acceptable to visit upon those animals any manner of cruelty as long as it lowers the price per pound. What level of distinction are we operating there? And does that line go right through our hearts and split us in two? I think so. My work has been very much about awakening people to the reality that how animals are treated in meat production and in food production is something we need to consider if we want our food choices to be in integrity with our hearts. If we want our lives to be a statement of compassion, not cruelty, then we need to look at the choices we're making and what really are the consequences.
Could you speak a little bit about environmental sustainability relative to food choices? Because that was a very enlightening thing for me when I first read your book in the 80s.
Thank you. But many people today want to lead more earth-friendly lives, want to create lifestyles that are in harmony with the planet, that don't consume egregious levels of resources, that don't create disastrous levels of pollution. It's becoming ever more obvious that the way we've treated the atmosphere is leading to destabilization of the climate. And in many, many ways, our relationship to the earth as a culture is completely out of balance. And so people are looking for how they can seek to correct that. And it turns out that the food choices that are healthiest for our bodies, that lower our cholesterol, that give us the leanest, fittest instruments to operate in, that are kindest to the other animals because they don't have the kind of cruelty that's involved in modern meat production, are also the ones that are environmentally most benign. They consume the least resources. They allow the most food resources to be available to feed other people. Therefore, they are the most honest and effective answer we have to world hunger issues. And they are ecologically the obvious, virtuous thing to do. You know, I'll give you an example. It takes 16 pounds of grain to make the average pound of feedlot beef. The average, and virtually all the beef eaten in the United States is feedlot beef, and in all modern industrialized countries too. 16 pounds of grain to make a pound of beef. That's the feed conversion ratio. Well, it takes only 1 pound of grain to make a pound of whole wheat bread, or to prepare a pound of rice. You're wasting the other 15 pounds. It's just basically going into manure, which doesn't get used as a fertilizer because that's how the system has gone out of whack. It just becomes a pollutant into the water table. And what happens is that when you eat lower on the food chain, you eat a more plant-based diet, you move in a vegetarian or vegan direction, what happens is you are in effect consuming far less resources, and therefore there is less water pollution, there is less air pollution, there is less soil erosion, there are fewer greenhouse gases involved. You are basically having a lighter footprint on the planet, and you are taking a step with that footprint that is leading other people. We are such social creatures around our food. And when you take a step that's honoring the earth, that's living simply so others may simply live, that's honoring all of our children's right and need to have a livable planet in the future, that's honoring all of our rights and needs to have a stable climate in the future. And you're doing that with a food choice that is also healthy for your body, and that is also kinder for the animals. You're in a state of integrity. And you're in a state of clarity about who you are and what you want your statement to the world to be through the way you live. And do you want that to be a statement of consciousness and conscience and compassion and care? Or do you want to be like, unfortunately, most people in the modern world, and let it be a statement merely of convenience, and unfortunately that translates into indifference to the planet, to the animals, and in fact to your own health.
We are honored to share with you his inspiring example of healthy living.
I know that a lot of the research that you've done speaks a little bit about there used to be a feeling that it was one of the most perfect proteins. Could you speak a little bit about eggs in the diet and a vegan lifestyle?
Well, I don't eat eggs either. No, my family doesn't. The idea that eggs were the ideal protein stems from rat experiments. And they found that baby rats, prospered when they were fed eggs. And so they sort of made the assumption from that. This is originally in the research. A lot has been done since, but that was how it first got started. It turns out that a baby rat's needs are so different than a human baby's needs. Rat mother's milk is about 45% protein. A human mother's milk is about 8% protein. It's not really a comparable food. And I look at the constituency of human breast milk as nature's answer to the question of what is the ideal food for a human baby. I don't look to what makes a rat grow the fastest. I look at what will help a human being thrive. And it's obviously human breast milk for a human infant.